what does it mean to be on track to lead a low-carbon revolution? What we need to do is we need to transform our high-carbon sectors, the ones that Julia touched on. And one example of transforming a high-carbon sector is, as Julia's and the Climate Change Committee have recommended to governments, is we need to almost completely decarbonise the power sector by 2030. That is no easy feat. The other thing we need to do is ensure that low-carbon industries are really taking off and displacing high-carbon business. When I say low-carbon industries, I'm talking about renewable energy businesses, the carbon capture, and all kinds of other clean tech industries. So in order to sort of see what does that mean in terms of what is on track, I will point you to WWF's own Climate Solutions 2 report, which we released, I think, about a year ago. And what Climate Solutions 2 tells us, which is a follow-up to the first report, is that by 2014, these low-carbon industries need to be starting to grow at about 20% per year. That is ambitious, but it's a feasible growth rate for any industry any new industry to start really taking off. But that means we've got a very short window of opportunity to get the policy frameworks right, to get the incentive structures right, so that those low carbon, those new emerging industries can take off, and they need to take off so that by 2014 they are growing at about 20% per year, because that will mean that we are on track for a low carbon economy. So hopefully that sort of gives us a bit of an idea of what defines us being on track to lead a low carbon revolution. And that sort of rate of growth, that pace, means that clean tech industries will be able to flourish after 2014 competitively in a free market. If we don't achieve that goal, then it will require massive government interventions, and the free markets won't be enough on their own to sustain the growth of low-carbon industries. So then the question is, as we will brief today, are we on track for this kind of transformation? And I now just want to touch on a few industry sectors, some of which Julia brought up as well. So if I just start with the oil sector, where we have British firms and we have part British firms operating overseas. WWF, you may know, at the moment has a campaign on oil sands in Alberta in Canada. And unfortunately, the oil sector seems to be going after heavy oil. Easy oil is close to running out. And so therefore, oil companies like BP, like Shell, are going after heavy oil sands in Canada, where the carbon intensity of production and extraction of that oil is 3 times that of extracting and processing easy oil, conventional oil. So it does strike us, unfortunately, that the oil sector is recarbonising just at the time when we need rapid decarbonisation. So I think there are big challenges ahead for the oil sector to start grappling with this agenda. Aviation, very topical at the moment. I did notice that the Birmingham trains this morning were absolutely jam-packed for people hoping to fly today. I mean, when the dust settles, when the ash clouds do actually start to move on, business will resume as usual. And again, in the aviation sector, it does seem as though we are absolutely recarbonising rather than decarbonising. I think the airlines are talking a good game. They're talking about the improvements in aircraft fuel efficiency, and that those are good things to happen. However, the volume of air traffic is fast outpacing any sort of technological advances. So again, the aviation is facing some tough questions when this is the time sectors need to play a part in decarbonisation. I mean, I think the upside from a low-carbon perspective was the recent ruling against expanding London Heathrow and the third runway. And that really probably wasn't down to the COP15, but it was down to the bold Climate Change Act, And I think that's a good test of how the Climate Change Act is sort of influencing things in the UK. The judgment went against airport expansion because it was seen to be countering what the Climate Change Act is there to deliver on. If I move on to the power sector, the utility sector, there is some good signs happening. What we're seeing is Centrica and other companies starting to expand their energy services businesses. They're starting to engage people in their homes about selling energy efficient boilers, insulation and other energy efficiency measures. And that is actually quite encouraging. However, it's probably not enough quite at this time. What we need is the decoupling policies that we see in California, where that policy has really unleashed business opportunities, where utility companies are able to commercialise the idea of selling less product, less energy and more services. So on the demand side, we do need some kind of shift in policy so that utility companies here and across Europe can really go forward with energy services. In terms of the supply side of this sector, we need new infrastructure. We need new smart and super grids across the UK and Europe so that we are rewiring the infrastructure here to cater for renewable energy. And again, that is a big task ahead of us. But what is encouraging is that the network operators, National Grid and others in Europe are joining WWF and others to look at the Renewable Grid Initiative and how we get cross-border collaboration to get a renewable, rich infrastructure. So that's starting to happen, which is good news. If I then sort of just move briefly on to the sort of clean tech industries, and Julia mentioned some of these things. You know, we have seen a recent breakthrough on offshore wind farms. With the injection of cash from government, with the Crown Estate on board, you know, the offshore wind farms are starting. You know, the impetus is there now. We're also seeing marine power energy pilots off the coast of Scotland, again very encouraging. We're seeing the carbon capture demonstration projects as well, again encouraging. I think on the issue of CCS, what we at WWF are campaigning for is CCS to be fitted to existing coal plants where that results in less emissions, and not seeing partial capture with new coal plants where the result is more emissions. So that's the caveat on CCS, but otherwise we're fully behind that technology if it can work technically and if it can work commercially. And the question is, are these clean tech industries taking off so that we're going to see that required growth rate by 2040 of 20% per year? The automotive sector, I won't dwell on this too much because Julia sort of informed us all what's happening there, but you know, it is encouraging. We're seeing the Nissan's plant in Sunderland as being a major manufacturer of electric cars in Europe. We're seeing the Nissan Leaf coming online at the end of this year with at last good numbers of electric vehicles. We're seeing the retailers, some of the retailers are thinking about putting charge points in some of the big retail parks. We're seeing home charging technology starting to emerge. It's becoming smarter so that we will be able to charge our electric cars off-peak during the night when it's easier for the power infrastructure to cope with that sort of thing. So I think there are good sort of things happening in the automotive sector, a real quite rapid shift of things. And then the final sector I just wanted to briefly touch on was the food sector. Another WWF report recently came out. It's called How Low. If you Google How Low WWF, you'll get our latest food report. And it says that the food system in this country is responsible for 30% of our greenhouse gas emissions. It was previously thought that food was about 20%. But if you include land use change overseas and deforestation from using things like palm oil and soya and other commodities, it's about 30%. And so we need to do a lot of work in food production and consumption. Meat and dairy, as we've all seen in the press, is at last being discussed and acknowledged as a high carbon area of impact. And what we're saying in our reports is that the production efficiencies of meat and dairy have to happen. We need to look after our farming community, but production efficiency alone will not go far enough. And we will need to start to engage consumers on better, healthier and lower carbon diets. So, in summarise, and to sort of summarise, some sectors, oil and gas, aviation, I think we are seeing worrying developments, and that needs to be addressed. The other sectors I touched on, I think we are seeing a real turning point. And I think I agree with Julia in that we are not on track yet to lead a low-carbon revolution at the required pace of change, but the signs are encouraging. Thank you.